Jessica was barefoot on a wrinkled carpet in a crowded bathroom, something that Sicilian hotels, even four-star ones, usually sin. The bright lights on the fogged-up mirror at the edges allowed him to see the tooth that was bothering him so much. The top left 6 has been bugging disgustingly for many days in a row. This is still not enough on holidays. He narrowed his eyes and gently pressed his index finger on the inflamed red gum. She moaned in pain. Tears welled up from her eyes. The girl involuntarily imagined that a cavity had formed in the tooth and that a whole swarm of microscopic wasps had settled in it. The disgusting creatures creak in the damp, narrow space, rub against each other with slippery bellies and hairy paws, scratch their gums with stiff wings, and itch, and the pain spreads in waves all over the jaw. Jessica shuddered, ran to the bathroom, feeling that she was about to vomit. Just dry spasms in the throat. "Will you be there soon?" Someone knocked on the door. "Of course. You are always impatient. Tourist, damn it." "Don't come in, Michael." "I'm coming," Jessica replied boringly, getting up in front of the mirror again and trying to suppress her anger. After all, it's not her boyfriend's fault that they're afraid of dentists. "No doctors. If it hurts, it will hurt, and it will pass. I've put up with it for 2 months, and now I will." The girl sighed, counted to 10 in her mind to calm down. The pain subsided, but the tooth continued to ache and throb. He looked at himself meticulously, adjusted the short light square, and moved the gold chain lock that had slipped behind his back. He touched his cheek. Was it swollen? No, it's okay. He reached for the door handle, but stopped and looked at himself in the mirror. And he whispered, "You're lying. You're lying to yourself again. The tooth looks disgusting. You need to do something urgently." But a deep, dark, senseless part of his soul extinguished the voice of reason. But not to the doctor. No doctors. The cord. For Bidenta? Jessica didn't know Italian, but she really wanted the mustachioed pharmacist to understand her, and she composed on the fly. She was in a hurry. Going to the pharmacy is quite normal in her situation, however. Jessica, for some reason, decided to hide it from Michael, as well as the fact that she has a toothache. The case turned out on its own. After drinking beer for breakfast, the man went in search of a bathroom, leaving the girl on a bench in the middle of a picturesque square. As soon as Michael disappeared from view, he almost ran to the door with a big green plus. "What's that?" The apothecary smiled and stretched out his hands without understanding. "Denta?" She pointed to her teeth. "Corda." She imitated brushing her teeth by taking the ends of an imaginary thread and moving it back and forth, and the wasps in the tooth were buzzing. Jessica tried her best not to pay attention to them, not to wince and speak calmly, but she was getting worse and worse. "Filo per I denti." "Yes, signora, yes." A round box was placed on the counter. The girl nodded and tried again. "Aspirin." This time, the pharmacist immediately understood what I was talking about and showed Jessica a package of effervescent tablets and a bottle of ordinary ones. She pointed to the bottle. "Now I have everything I need to solve my little problem," she assured herself. The pharmacist shot a suspicious glance at the girl as he wiped several large drops of sweat from his forehead. His hands were shaking. That's what it was. That's why he looked like this. Jessica hurried to pay and go out to the square, confusedly telling the pharmacist the well-known grazie. Thank God, Michael hasn't returned yet. He sat on the same bench, and put 2 aspirin tablets in his mouth, then added 2 more. She chewed, ignoring the bitterness. This will calm down the operating system. Maybe. Taormina is one of the most visited tourist cities in Sicily. Its history dates back almost 2.5 millennia, 206 meters above sea level. Beautiful view. Michael flipped through the guidebook as he walked, muttering to himself, "The Cathedral of St. Nicholas, 15th century." So that was the kind of church that was in the square. Jessica wasn't listening to him. They were walking along Corso Umberto, a busy, noisy, and absolutely touristy street. Old houses, neat balconies with flowers, carved arches, lush greenery, cafes with delicious desserts, boutiques of fashion brands that look so ridiculous in the historical center. At every turn, there are shops with friendly hosts offering to buy standard souvenir junk, handmade ceramics, local delicacies, and gelato ice creams loved by all Italians. The perfect place for a perfect vacation. At least, that's what Michael thought. Jessica was enraged by everything around her. He saw only dirty doors, piles of garbage on the broken pavement, disgusting, dilapidated sheds, beggars in stinky rags. The girl was wrapped in a gray sports jacket, which did not fit her blue dress at all and disfigured her figure. She was shaking. The tooth was throbbing. The wasps were buzzing and stinging. The aspirin didn't help. What kind of strange whim is it to go to Sicily at the beginning of April? She thought angrily. Of course, it's hotter here than in Moscow. But my God, you can't swim in the sea, not even the slightest cloud. And that's all. It's cold. The locals wear sheepskin coats. It rained for 2 days in a row. Of course, I was impressed. But she knew it wasn't true. She was not impressed. The bad tooth was no longer just testing her strength. It was driving her crazy. She kept thinking about what happened in the bathroom of the cafe, where even hearty dishes were served during nap time. There, Michael fortified himself with a good steak, which was accompanied by a whole mountain of French fries and green salad. Jessica ordered seafood soup, but in the end, she only ate a couple of spoons. After that, it began. The tooth burst with pain. It looks like a hard membrane of some kind of marine reptile. From the soup has stuck to the gum. Jessica immediately ran away from the table and furiously pulled the dental floss in the crowded toilet until her mouth filled with salty blood. It seemed to him that the smell of decomposition mingled with the usual taste of iron. That was 2 hours ago, and I could still smell that disgusting smell in his mouth. And he terrified her beyond belief. Judging by the map, we are literally 2 steps away from the famous Greek theater. Michael put her out of her thoughts. Built in the 3rd century BC, it has a capacity for 10,000 spectators. The second largest in Sicily after the theater in Syracuse. Wow. Are we leaving? Yes. Greek theater again, Jessica reluctantly replied, and secretly touched her cheek. Come on. You've always been interested in all kinds of archaeological things. Michael adjusted his baseball cap. And then we will return to that square. It is full of restaurants with sea views. What a beauty. It's not a migraine. It's not a migraine at all. That buzzing, the pain in my head, they're wasps. They are real. And they built a beehive in my gum. The girl was shaking. Meanwhile, several more insects came out and flew away. The wound became larger, exposing the yellow-brown root of the tooth, under which the wasps swarmed. The pain was growing. Jessica pressed her finger. and the smell of blood and rot hit her nose. The agitation intensified. My God, what is it? An electric shock seemed to pierce the cheek, and wasps began to fly out of the gum. One by one, many, fast. Jessica screamed, recoiled from the mirror, and stumbling, fell. Her head hit the toilet, breaking off a large piece. Water gushed onto the tiled floor. A whole swarm of vile creatures broke free, turning her left cheek into scarlet rags, from under which the broken bones of the skull could be seen. Blood poured from the motionless girl's open mouth. It mixed with the water on the floor and flowed into a dirty drain under a rusty grate. The whole bus turned around at her cry. What are you doing? Michael looked at his girlfriend, dumbfounded. The old Italian woman in the chair opposite crossed herself, looking at them unkindly. Jessica looked around, clutching the seat convulsively and trying to throw off the remnants of the nightmare. Her blonde hair was matted with sweat and hung in icicles. Her pale forehead was also all wet, and an unhealthy blush burned on her cheeks. Her lips were trembling, and she began to sob. A dream. Thank God, it's only a dream.
What's wrong with you? Michael hugged at her and felt that she was shaking. Are you healthy? Yes. It's all right, she said, trying to calm down. But the man had already put his hand to her forehead and understood everything.
Yes. And Michael continued to admire all kinds of cute little things, like a wrought iron fence, a lancet window, or a cat in a flower bed. He clicked on his mirror from left to right, saying that later he would certainly turn these rare shots into a wonderful album with travel sketches. But Jessica was gloomier than a cloud. She was sick of these crooked streets, doors that hadn't been repaired for 100 years, idiotic graffiti. It seemed to her that someone was looking at her from the broken windows. She wanted to go to her room. She wanted to take a hot shower and get under 3 blankets, and not to let this stupid 6 stay. Right before her eyes, the inflamed gum swelled up, smoothed out, and swelled up again. The thin skin stretched and parted, releasing black legs with sharp spikes. The wasp crawled out of the gum and began to wipe his eyes and wings, stained with blood and some kind of gray-brown mucus. She was very small, no bigger than a glass bead, but how disgusting. Jessica stood in front of the mirror in the bathroom of another cafe and pulled her cheek with trembling fingers. She was very pale. She had tears in her eyes, from disgust and fear, from the burning sweat that flowed from her forehead. The gum moved again. The wasp took off, disturbed by the movement. Another creature crawled out after her, and the antennae and legs of a third were already climbing after her. And above the insects, the cursed tooth glowed darkly. The enamel was perfectly smooth, but too thin to hide the blackness of the interior. Jessica screamed and sat up on the bed with a jerk. Hush! Hush! Michael materialized out of the gloom and put his arm around the girl's shoulders. She was trembling as if she had a fever. Her whole body was covered with sticky sweat, the smell of which made her think of illness and madness. My eyes hurt. Even a narrow strip of light coming through the thick curtains hurt. My God, it's a dream. My God, it's a dream. My God, it's a dream. Jessica repeated this simple spell, rocking back and forth. Another nightmare. Calm down. You're burning up. Michael hugged her, not knowing how to talk about the doctor again. when she brought up this topic just a couple of hours ago on the way to the room. Jessica threw a nasty tantrum in the middle of a busy street. It is a miracle that passers-by did not call the police or an ambulance while watching this scene. What time is it? It's almost 7 o'clock at night. You passed out. Jessica sobbed. The temperature rose to the heavens. All the muscles ached. The joints ached. The throat became dry and prickly. But the worst of all, of course, was the head. The pain nested under the sixth tooth, spreading in waves through the brain. It seemed to him that a black storm cloud had swelled from the top of his head to his chin. It hurt him even to think. Some fluid had accumulated behind her cheek, and a trickle was flowing from the left corner of her mouth. Blood with mucus and pus. Jessica felt sick from the bad smell and fear, and he realized that soon nothing could be done, and that he would die, perhaps in the middle of his vacation. "I need a doctor," the girl finally whispered. There were no pliers in the toolbox. Jessica once again rummaged through the screwdrivers and assorted keys. The pain became almost unbearable, and for a long time. For now, he can somehow tolerate it, but it won't be for long. Panicked, the girl grabbed the box and threw its contents into the sink. The box with screws and nuts was opened, and they splashed in all directions, jumped to the ground. There are no pliers, and there is nothing like them. Someone knocked on the door. Jessica was in a hurry. She locked herself back in the bathroom, leaving Michael to finish his coffee on the table. But it had been a long time. He began to worry and came to find out if everything was okay. "I'm fine," she tried to tell her boyfriend, but inarticulate sounds escaped from her mouth. Jessica realized that she was howling in pain and could no longer control it. Michael called her, and the knocks on the door became more insistent. She can't open it, because it's now or never. Jessica grabbed a chisel from the sink, hiding among the tools. There is no other choice. With a trembling hand, he picked up the forged soap dish. Michael was banging on the door and screaming, calling her and asking for help. Which means he has very little time. It's now or never. Jessica opened her mouth. The bones in her jaw responded with a flash of new pain, but this didn't stop her. The damn tooth seemed fine, but the gum around it became somewhat spongy, reddish-brown, oozing blood, and pus. And these things were throbbing. In Jessica's brain flashed the idea of how it would hurt her now, and a vague memory of some microscopic wasps. She shook her head to brush her sweat-soaked hair off her hot forehead. Seeing herself reflected in the mirror, she put a chisel to her tooth. The door was shaking from new knocks. Michael kept shouting his name. "Just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid," the girl begged herself, carrying a heavy soap dish. The latch gave way. Michael burst into the toilet, and it was at that moment that Jessica hit with all her might. The chisel jumped and entered the softened bone by a third, breaking the jaw. No, it's not okay. When everything is in order, they don't shout in a bad voice. "You're sick. You have a fever. It's okay. I'm telling you." Jessica threw his hand away. The fear passed, but the toothache did not go away, and she had to admit to herself that now almost the entire upper jaw hurts, and the nasty pulsation gives directly to the eye. "I'm going to take an aspirin." Aspirin? "We didn't take aspirin with us," Michael said, catching her eye. But the girl was digging in her purse and stubbornly didn't look at him. Finally, She found the medicine and put 4 pills in her mouth. That's not the case. This is not a case at all. Michael began to get angry. Let's go back to the room and call a doctor. There is insurance. No doctors. Jessica looked at him angrily. No doctors. I'm just tired. We walked too much yesterday, and we were unlucky with the weather. There's nothing to spoil the vacation, especially... It's a tooth, right? Michael interrupted. What? This is your tooth, which has been bothering you for 3 months. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. Do you really think I don't notice anything? That I don't care? Jessica wanted to answer, but did not think of what to say. Instead, she turned away and began to stare defiantly out the window. Sunny squares, pretty houses, and smiling Italians did not go well with her gloomy mood. Jessica again waved away Michael's hand and leaned back in the seat, closing her eyes. The man just shook his head, not understanding why this sweet and gentle girl suddenly had so much aggression. No doctors, she repeated hoarsely.